Hello, the internet, and welcome to Open Source Directions, hosted by Quansight, the webinar that brings you all of the news about the future of your favorite open source projects. My name is Anthony Skopatz, your host for Open Source Directions. Co-hosting with me today is Carol.
Hi, listeners. I'm Carol Willing. I'm an active member of the Jupyter and Python communities, and I'm very happy to have an opportunity to chat about OpenTeams today with Eunice and Davis. Eunice, please say hello to everyone.
Hi, my name is Eunice Chenju, and I'm the COO of OpenTeams. I'm based in Austin, Texas, but like I said before, I'm currently in San Diego.
And hi, I'm David Charbonneau, CTO of OpenTeams, and I'm based in Durham, North Carolina.
Excellent. Well, so before we dive into talking about OpenTeams in a lot of detail here, we'll have our famous Tweet of the Week section where each of our panelists will present a tweet that they've been enjoying recently. So, David, you're first up.
Sure. I've been following on Twitter a mathematician named Jules Hedges. He's been doing work on what he calls open games. And it's been very interesting to watch what he's been doing. And he put up a tweet recently where he was kind of saying he thinks he's onto something. It's a little cryptic, a little mysterious, a little exciting. So I'm really looking forward to whatever he ends up publishing related to this.
Excellent. And Eunice, do you have a tweet that you've been enjoying recently, or?
Yeah, so I'm very new to tweet, but very recently, one tweet that has been trending in my newsfeed is the tweet that showed everybody that we got into Sputnik ATX accelerator program. So I'll probably say that has been my favorite tweet recently, and it has been trending in my feed. So I'm really excited about the opportunity.
It's fantastic, and congratulations.
Thank
you.
I kind of in the spirit of OpenTeams, I'm a huge fan of open source education and computer science for all. And CS for All just announced their conference registration is open for this year, and it's going to be October 21st to 23rd in Salt Lake City, Utah. So if you're interested in educating the world, join
Excellent.
us.
Cool.
For mine today, Min tweets, I super duper don't like that GitHub checks page makes an actual test result or makes actual test results an extra click away. This is a surprisingly large negative effect on my day. And I frankly couldn't agree more.
I totally
so annoying.
agree with that.
Really bad UX. In any event, let's go ahead and move on to our discussion of OpenTeams. So OpenTeams is about 360 registered users after launching in July, and it's growing at about 10% a week. And currently there are 11 projects that have established profiles on OpenTeams and are starting to recognize contributors since launching that capability only a couple of weeks ago, actually. So at this point, we're going to ask, Eunice and David a couple of questions, and we'll have a nice chat, go back and forth here. So
it's really nice growth. And maybe Eunice, you can tell us why the project was started and what need it filled.
Yeah, so OpenTeams was started with the broad goal of improving the sustainability of open source. There's been a lot of discussion about sustainability in open source communities for some time now, and we saw an opportunity to contribute to supporting the process of recognizing contribution to open source and broadening the scope of contribution that can and should be recognized. We also saw an opportunity to define a new marketplace for funding open source development, building upon the experience of companies like Quansight. We want to see all contributors to open source get recognized for their work, and if they want, also get paid.
excellent.
There's probably some people that want.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like Carol's coming out a bit, but yeah, that's really excellent. So are there alternatives to OpenTeams out there, and sort of what are they, and what does the landscape look like right now?
Yeah, on the recognition side, there's a couple of different projects that are very interesting. There's allcontributors.org and OctoHatRack. both of these are some standards around ways of mentioning contributors, like in a contribution file. And there's also open badges, which is a kind of distributed data structure for recognizing both skills and accomplishments, but also contributions. On the funding side, there are a wide variety of approaches that already exist in the market, right? There are the software foundations, which are pretty noticeable. You know, everything from the Linux Software Foundation to NumFocus to the Python Software Foundation. There are also fundraising sites. Some folks, raise some cash using, I forget what, Patreon, but there's also Open Collective, which provides an operating model and a way to have kind of an open open distribution of what's going on, like who's paying for things and what people are being paid to do. And there's also companies like Tidelift that are helping companies both find the software that they use, but then find ways to contribute to funding the development of those software projects. But we're trying to kind of tie the two of them together in an interesting way.
Sounds great. So what technologies are you using to tie everything together?
OpenTeams is built on Django using the Django REST framework. That's for the back end. And on the front end, we're using Vue.js and Nuxt. Nuxt is really great because it allows us to have that dynamic front end, but get page renders at the server rather than at the client. And for search, we're using Haystack.
Yeah, that's really quite cool. So who started the OpenTeams project? I know this might be a little complicated to answer in some ways. But.
Yeah, OpenTeams was started by Quansight. The original concept was more focused on supporting Quansight needs, but we quickly realized that there was an opportunity to address a larger need in both the open source community and in the broader software market. And that's really how the idea of OpenTeams came out.
I could name a few names for folks that were involved early on. There was Trent Oliphant and Britton. Oh gosh, I've forgotten Britton's last name, but some folks at Quansight were definitely involved early on. And then there was also yourself, Anthony, Ivan Ogasawara, Abraham. Oh gosh, I'm terrible with names today. Abraham and a bunch of other folks at Quansight have had the opportunity to contribute. Britton Hard and Abraham Maxfield.
Maxfield, yeah.
Nice. So who maintains the project?
OpenTeams itself was incorporated in April to develop the OpenTeams website. So it's maintained by the corporation.
Excellent. So what sort of communities are your users and I guess in some sense the contributors to OpenTeams coming from? So who is involved? Who's the normal use case of someone who would show up the site and kind of use the site, and what does that person look like?
Yeah, so OpenTeams is in itself an open source project at this time. However, contributors of OpenTeams have primarily come from Quansight and a contract development company we've been working with. Our intention for OpenTeams is to support all the open source community, though many of our initial adopters come from the scientific Python community. So we've seen a few of the projects that have shown up on OpenTeams so far, like NumPy and SciPy, are definitely projects that were already adopted within Quansight, and we are definitely getting some traction with the similar projects on OpenTeams as well.
Excellent.
Very cool. So I know it's early days, but is the project participating in any diversity and inclusion
We're currently a company of 3 people, so we don't have an explicit effort at this time. But there was a great statement by a guest on Open Source Direction a couple of weeks ago about, diversity and inclusion is about what you do. And so we hope to live up to that standard that was set by that guest. And we hope that our platform can also support efforts in all of open source projects to be welcoming, diverse, and inclusive.
I think that's a great goal.
Yeah, especially considering it's always good to get off on the right foot, and considering how new the the effort
Yeah.
is and everything.
Yeah.
At this point, we're going to get into the fun stuff and go into a project demo. So hopefully, David or Eunice, one of you can share your screen and walk us through OpenTeams. And Carol and I will sit back and ask you questions.
Yeah, I will share my window here.
All right.
So this is what you see when you log in. Just a quick description of the site and what it's intended to do. If you scroll down, you can learn a little bit more about what the benefits of using the site are if you're a contributor or a project leader,
right.
as well as if you are a funder or what we're calling an open partner for companies that are like Quansight that kind of provide services and development around open source projects. You can sign in using GitHub and GitLab today, or you can go ahead and have a username and a password. I'm going to go ahead and sign in with GitHub.
Yeah, it looks very slick for those of you who aren't able to see this website right now. But
yeah, our
it's
design's
really nice
come
design.
a long way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really has. I noticed that when I logged in the other day.
It's definitely not GeoCities.
Yeah. That might be where we started roughly, though.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do to kind of demonstrate the capability is I'm going to go ahead and create a new project. And I'll, by default, as someone who created the project, be a project manager. And I'll show what that means once we have a contribution that's a claim to a contribution that's made to the project. The basic idea is, oh wait, I clicked the wrong button.
So for those listening, there's a profile page once you log in, basically, that you end up at. And then from your profile, it seems as though you can create a new project.
Yep.
Yeah. So
and I'm going to provide a slug. Oh, and it gives me a suggestion, and I'll stick with that.
That's nice that it gives a suggestion.
And what is a slug?
Suggested logical name, basically. It'll end up as the last part of the path in the URL.
Okay, great.
Hey, if you care and you want to have human readable URLs, it's a nice thing to provide.
Right.
We like human readable URLs. They're much nicer to work with.
Now, I'm not going to upload an image or a logo in this case, but we could. And if I had a repo to point to, actually it wants me to link to one. I didn't think about that. Well, let me just make one up. Oh, here we go. I haven't created a project for this, but I'm going to go ahead and create one.
Wait, you're telling me you have to have repos for software now? Is that
that's shocking, right?
Yeah, is that a new rule I missed? I don't know. I can't get with all this subversion stuff. It's just not my jam.
Subversion. CVS.
Yeah. Vax VMS.
RCS.
Just number the directories. That's all that you need, really.
So now I've created an LL step project, and someone could, for example, come along and claim they had made a contribution. Eunice, would you like to do that?
Sure. Let me go ahead and see all the projects that are available that have been oh, look, I've actually contributed to this project.
Oh, can you share your screen?
Can you share your screen? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll stop. I'll stop sharing for now.
Let me see.
And then I will come back to sharing my screen in a moment.
So.
We could have both shared simultaneously, actually.
Oh, okay. I'll share it again.
That'd be kind of cool. We haven't done that.
This would be the first time, but it's such a collaborative environment. I think we might need to. So.
There we go. It's that little window icon when you mouse over yourself in the window.
Or you can go up to the actions bar at the top of the screen. And if you click that, there's enable screen sharing below.
So do you guys see my screen now?
Yep, that we do.
Okay,
Yep.
awesome. Mine probably looks smaller compared to what David has, but that's fine.
That's fine. Yeah.
So I'm going to my profile and hold on, wait a minute. Let's see. So I'm going to go to the projects that are available right now, and lots of projects that has been created today. So that's awesome. So I'm assuming we have now 13 projects, not more 11, without putting David's project that he just created. But let's say I contribute to this project and I want to add my contribution. Let's see, what did I contribute here? It's a project management.
Oh, so your screen isn't changing. I don't know if you're doing things on it.
I am.
Oh, it's frozen.
Oh, wait a minute.
You might just be on the wrong screen.
Let's see.
First rule of live demos, right?
Do live demos.
But David, it looks like as though one of our viewers is going to contributions.
So
Lyra
has claimed that she made a contribution to LL Step, an example contribution, and you know what? I'm going to go ahead and say she did. So if I come in here, I can approve it. Now, what happens when I approve a contribution? When we look at the project, if I'm somebody else looking at this project, it'll actually show up in the list of contributions to the project. If I had rejected it, it wouldn't show up on the project's profile as an approved or accepted contribution claim. However, any contribution claim you make on your own profile will always show up on your profile. And we can go look at Lyra Mishiro's profile, and we can see that she's got a couple of contributions that she's claimed, and she created one project. She created the Spamhound SMS filter project. Now, some background. Lyra works with Redwork, which is a company that's been helping us with implementing the site. So that's how she knew to go and create one for us. Thank you, Lyra.
Excellent.
And one thing you can see is that when you make a contribution claim, it shows up on your profile, like, as I said, whether you claimed it or not, but approved ones are shown as approved, meaning that somebody involved with the project acknowledged the fact that you did, in fact, make a contribution.
Right. And so is there any kind of vetting in terms of creating a project? It seems like if you are the first ones to the site, you can kind of claim a project. Right?
That is today we do not have a vetting process, but as we grow, we know we're going to have one. So we've discussed a variety of approaches. At the end of the day, we're likely to support multiple ways to prove that you have administrative rights to a repository, for example. Maybe create an example page in a specific branch or something that we can go and see to demonstrate that you have the ability to assert governance power over that project in some measure or respect. But for the time being, it's if you see somebody claiming that they're a project manager for a project, let us know at info@openteams.com and we'll reach out and resolve the discrepancy.
Excellent. And I guess, what do you mean by contribution? I think that's something
that's a great question.
Pretty open here.
Yeah. What I mean by contribution is really, really broad. So everything from you sat at a booth at OSCON, like I think you should be able to say, I did this. I raised my hand and say, I attended a booth at OSCON, and I was performing an advocacy role for the project, and you should get credit for that. So it can be everything from bug triage to graphic design, project management, volunteer work, giving a talk at your local meetup, but also, of course, code contributions.
Yeah. And one of the reasons why we decided to even go ahead and make this one of our primary focus is because we believe that the ecosystem of participating in open source project is so much broader than just writing code. There are so many other people that are involved to make a project successful, and all contributions needs to be recognized. And there's really nowhere right now that that shows that. So that's one thing that we really wanted to put out there when we created OpenTeams.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing we talked about at the SciPy conference, there was a bunch of us, and we were talking about writing grants for some of these scientific projects. And if we had people with grant experience, it would be nice to find that. And I think OpenTeams would be a great way to
Absolutely.
try and find that.
Our goal would be you could be recognized for grant writing and grant drafting or whatever. The way we've got this structured, when you make a claim, there are a set of curated suggestions for activities that you could claim you did. And what we'll do is we're going to watch over time as the different activities change. And for ones that gain traction, there's a certain amount of reuse of them, then we'll move them into the suggestions. So grant writing is one we probably should just go ahead and throw in there. But that is exactly the use case that we're looking for.
So are these contributions then categorized in some way, or do they have a labeling mechanism, I suppose? I don't know what verbiage you're using exactly here.
So when we look over here to the right, we've got Eunice's DevOps contribution and Lyra's project management contribution.
I see.
And ultimately, the goal will be that we'll have a wide variety of tags, and we'll have rich search and query capabilities so that you can identify people who contributed in specific ways to different kinds of projects. We want to build a really rich data set so that we can ask very meaningful questions. So for example, if you are looking for someone who could contribute to a project that uses Google Flat Buffers, for example, it'd be great to find projects that used Google Flat Buffers and people who contributed to those projects.
And so I guess what's the frequency that you anticipate people saying they contributed in some of these categories, right?
I'm not quite sure. One of the things that as we look forward, we've talked a lot about automation, and the critical bit for the automation is going to be observables. So we want to make it possible to get as wide a variety of contribution claims as possible, and then start figuring out ways to automatically nominate people for recognition. An example that sticks with me is an integration with Sign Up Genius would be really interesting, because you could capture things like I showed up on a hack day, or I showed up to man the booth again at a conference, and we could watch the fact that somebody had signed up. And if there was an acknowledgement that they showed up, for example, then we could generate the confirmation automatically, and it might even be automatically approved. So I think in the early days, we're not expecting a really high frequency, but as time goes on, the frequency should grow, especially as we build out automation and integration.
Yeah, I mean, I could see something like, there's Write the Docs has a really active, healthy community, but it's really hard to measure or even track things that aren't typical code contributions. I mean, documentation does get tracked, but some of the things like copy editing or things like that really don't. And I think this is a way to really give the broader ecosystem of people who perhaps do training or outreach a way to showcase their skills and the health of the project.
Yeah, as Travis responded, people should be thinking monthly or quarterly right now. And so they just go on and make their claims. And I totally agree. We need to, our goal really is to find a way to capture those difficult to observe contributions with an eye towards, for the easy to observe ones, ways to automate their introduction onto the platform.
Yeah. I mean, I'll probably even add that, we're even thinking about the basics right now. When somebody signs up with a GitHub or a GitLab account, how can we make it easier for them to claim their contribution without having to manually go on each project and upload their or at least claim their contribution. So there are definitely ways we're thinking about how to make this process easier. But from the start, we always have to start manually and then learn and understand how to eventually automate along the way.
Yeah, I think Rolf had some really good comments in the chat. He was saying graphic design, marketing, fundraising, cat herding, lots of things that we'd love to see happen and give people credit for. And I can't agree more. So I think it's great. And I think there's places like, scraping maybe conference schedules and things like that to get some of that information seeded as well.
So I just wanted to quickly show some other sides of the site. We could see what Gil has in their profile. We have many empty profiles, so we're planning on maybe this would be a great opportunity for us to say, please come on and fill out your profile a little bit more. We've improved things a great deal since some folks have originally signed on. And I can show you, if I go to my account settings, we can actually see all the different things and bits of information that I can provide. So
yeah, this would be great.
You can actually even add a little biography, and that'll show up on your profile. You can, if you want to be eventually findable as available for hire, you can provide contract information.
That's really interesting. That's a really interesting aspect.
And just keeping in mind that we don't put that information is not available to the public. So it is kept for yourself. And eventually, if an opportunity shows up that match your criteria, we will be reaching out to you. But you don't have to worry about that information being out there.
That's good.
Yeah.
For example, I'm not really available for 10 hours a week. And today,
Darhas
go ahead.
Said he added some repos. Darhas said he had added some repos to his profile.
Let's go take a look. First off, I should follow Darhas. There we go. Yeah, so we can. Oh, he has created 3 projects: EarthSim, Quest, and Ulmo. Awesome. Thank you, Darhas.
Let's check out Ulmo, I think.
It's a great name.
Yeah.
So we can go to the website and to the GitHub.
GitHub.
I see. So you can see a feed of both all the activity and a feed of just like your activity to a particular project.
Exactly.
Yeah, interesting. Are those feeds available through some sort of API, or is it strictly like internal?
That is a good question. The answer is not entirely yes yet. So everything is driven by a REST API in the back end. I don't know. We are not publishing that API just yet, but I don't see a reason why we couldn't in the future. I would also expect over time we might explore, providing some syndicated feed format. It could be RSS, could be Atom.
Right.
Yeah. So those are things that we'll definitely be looking to do in the future, but we've got all the basis for supporting that there now.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to show off about how OpenTeams works or any of the underlying ideas here?
Not at this time. I can give a quick preview on something I know that's coming.
Okay. Yeah, we'd love to see it.
So today, when you make a contribution, we don't really provide a whole lot of help, right? You can select a project and you can search for a project, and then you can select from a predefined set of activities that we've noticed that seem like good ones to have in the list right now. But what we think we can do is actually look at your GitHub or your GitLab account and suggest projects for you to claim contributions to based on the projects that you've forked or projects that we can find that you've made pull requests to. So we can be a little bit more prescriptive in our suggestions for projects. And so we're taking baby steps toward making the interface just a little more easy to use. And even eventually make it so that when you sign in, we might even prompt you and say, hey, we noticed there's been some activity on your GitLab account, some pull requests that you've submitted. Would you like to claim those contributions? That's not coming yet, but it's the kind of thing we're thinking about in the future.
Excellent.
remember correctly, I think OpenHub may do that with the claiming contributions. So that might be a place to at least see how they do it.
Yeah.
It does, but yeah, that's cool. I like that.
Something that I also wanted to mention, that today you don't have to be a project leader to start a project. You can also be just a project contributor. And one thing that we will just ask you to do is to send an email to maybe some of your to a project leader and let them know that, hey, that they should come and recognize you for your contribution. I just thought I should mention that since David was on the page.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And that's kind of how Conda Forge, Anthony, has worked as well. Or at least that's how it seems to me, because there's been repos that we've developed and other people have sort of submitted it to Conda Forge.
Right.
And
yeah.
But people were but it gets sorted out within an hour or so. So I think people are pretty honest about just wanting to help and share the good stuff.
Yeah.
So, for example, here, Eunice's project doesn't exist, and Eunice at OpenTeams.com is not a registered user, but I can go ahead and claim that contribution. It would show up on my profile, and Eunice would receive 2 invitations, one of them to create a profile, and one of them to create a profile for her project. And when she did, my contribution claim would be there waiting for her to approve.
That's cool.
That's nice. Yeah. So it allows you to, you kind of have a virtual set of users that are virtual profiles that are waiting to be claimed.
Exactly.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's really nice.
And that actually went into the site yesterday. So thank you to the development team.
A new
Real
feature
time.
here. Yeah. Hot off the presses. That's excellent. Yeah, so it sounds like the site is getting updated pretty frequently, and you're still working on it and making tons of improvements, which is great.
Our cadence is roughly once a week, though we actually had 2 production pushes this week.
Cool. Yeah, that's great.
That's good.
Carol, any lingering thoughts or questions?
I would love to see it be wildly successful for all the non-code contributions that are so critical to all these projects. So I'm hoping that comes to fruition.
Yeah,
thank you
very much. I think that's the sentiment for everyone on this call.
Absolutely.
So at this point, why don't we go into our roadmap discussion? So, and we'll chat a little bit more about sort of where OpenTeams is going. And Eunice, I know you have some thoughts on this. So, what is the future of OpenTeams?
I'll probably go on our primary focus right now. It's really making it easier for contributors to be recognized and for project leaders to build their profile, their project profiles, and manage contribution recognition processes. So we really want to make it easier for people to just recognize all contribution across different projects.
Yeah, we're really looking for feedback from the community on the features and capabilities that they'd love to see. And but we do have some highlights for things that we're going to be pursuing in the coming months. One of the big ones I think that we need to add is contribution nominations. I know for myself, I might not be highly motivated to necessarily raise my hand and say where I contributed to an open source project. It might make me a little nervous. And I think that's true of a lot of folks. So I think it's going to be very important for people to make it so that anyone can nominate somebody else and say that person did an awesome job doing something related to the project, and have it so that their profile can be built up. And it's not just you patting yourself on the back, but it's others patting you on the back as well.
Right.
We also are looking at different models for contribution acknowledgement governance. So right now, if you are a project manager from within the site's perspective, you are responsible for approving or denying or rejecting the contribution claims. And that's kind of adding to the administrative burden for people that are already, pretty overburdened. Now, this is potentially part of maintaining the health of a project, but we want to kind of make it so that you can delegate that responsibility. So, if we have acknowledged users or people who have roles within the project, make it so that they could actually approve or deny contribution claims, so that it's not all falling on the project leader's shoulders.
Right.
As I mentioned earlier, we're looking at ways of improving automation and integration, finding ways to provide more suggestions, automatically perform nominations, and maybe even automatically perform approvals. And on the marketplace side of it, we're going to be working with a select group of open team partners and open source projects to pilot how the marketplace could work. And we're hoping to develop that over the coming months as well, so that we can kind of round out the entire story for what we hope open teams can become.
Excellent. So how do people go about giving you feedback right now? What's the protocol for that?
There are a couple of approaches. You can reach out to us through the email, info@openteams.com. I believe we have a GitHub repo where people can open issues. We should find the link and post it later. I don't have it handy.
Yeah.
And we also, there's a chat, isn't there?
So one thing that we are going to be adding probably next week will be a community channel where different users of the site will be able to also post feedbacks on that channel, and it will be available to the public.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
lots of different methods there. Yeah. So, Carol, did you have any other questions on the roadmap?
I have a thought, but I don't know if it's a question. But have you guys thought about maybe trying to find like a project or a person that is very experienced in doing marketing for open source or fundraising for open source, and sort of have them be sort of like, your initial, users, or, to help you get into communities where that work is being done?
Eunice, did you want to take that one, or I can take it?
So I just want to make sure I understand your thought or your question. So you're saying that, have you thought about maybe working with a specific project and helping them get to a certain point where they can eventually either raise money within that community? Is that correct?
Well, that's one of the things. But then the other thing might be, say there's somebody that gives frequent talks on how do you raise funds in open source.
Okay.
Inviting them to be a part of, a contributor to the community would be great. Sorry if I just cut out.
No, you didn't cut out.
But it would be, I don't know. It's a thought for the future, because sometimes it's that viral, like, word of mouth. Yeah. Like the documentation folks that are really into documentation all kind of congregate in XYZ place, and graphic design people probably congregate in another place. But, to sort of help get the word out, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, we've definitely thought about it for sure. What we've even been looking at are different personalities in the open source community that have had success at raising money for the particular projects. And I'll probably say very recently, we've also even brought somebody in-house to help us make that process easy. I'll probably say one of our first hire will be somebody that has some kind of experience helping raising money for open source projects. And that's one thing that we're very excited about, because at the end of the day, that is one of our long-term goals. How can we make open source projects stay healthy? How can they stay more sustainable? So that is in our long-term vision, but we are going to be doing baby steps along the way to make those happen.
This is not
Sounds
this
great.
is an opportunity for me to issue a correction. I said we're 3 people earlier, but it's fairly recently, so we're actually 4 people. Hi, well.
Yay!
Yeah. So we're definitely thinking about that for sure.
It's awesome.
Yeah, that's great. Well, are there any other roadmap-y kind of items that you would like to talk about? Get out there, or I guess sort of one of my questions here is, about when we can expect some of these things, like the increased automation or contribution nomination? Sort of, what's the timeline for these features?
I would say some of the automation and integration, as I mentioned, is coming next week. So the very first baby step. Past that, I am not sure. Right now we have a long list of things, and we're just kind of prioritizing them and fitting them in as we can.
Right.
So I don't have a great answer for that question, but the general answer is we're going to be making a lot of baby steps continuously for the next several months.
Okay.
And I think one thing that I just want to mention is that every prioritization that we've been doing on our roadmap is based off the feedbacks that we've been getting from our current users. So we have a roadmap of where we want the project to go, but the users have been the one helping us prioritize which one should we be putting on the first.
Yeah. So you're basically saying that if you're jump on as a user right now, you get a lot of
and
influence.
Give us feedback.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. we had a prioritization that we thought worked, and then we got a bunch of feedback, and we re-swizzled things around in response. So that's a big thank you to the folks that provided the feedback, but it's also a call for action. We want to hear from you.
Right.
We really, really want to hear from you.
That's excellent.
Yeah. And Travis put a few interesting things in the chat, and he had said one big aspect of the platform is to provide a place for project leaders to approve fundable features. And what I really liked was a place for people to put enhancement proposals and get agreement from the community on them so that they can get funded. And I think that just benefits all sides of the community.
Enhancement proposals and have a hard time living somewhere. So if this could be a place where they would live, that would be amazing. That would be really useful.
And also get visibility too, beyond just the project. So that would be awesome.
Yep. Excellent.
Cool. I think we have some questions if there's no more roadmap-y things.
Yeah, I think there are. You want to go ahead and ask the first one here?
Yeah, Nicholas asked, how would a biggish open source project like NumPy use OpenTeams?
I think I've got a couple answers to that question. My hope would be that they could kind of step into it, create a profile, and start encouraging folks to describe contributions that they've made to NumPy so they can get acknowledged, and both the project profile and the individual profiles can start to get filled out. Past that, I want to turn the question around and say, how would NumPy like to use OpenTeam? I'd love for insight both from the project leadership as well as members, contributors to the project. What do they see could be valuable in our platform to them and to their project?
Yeah, I mean, just maybe I'll add some of my own thoughts here, but I feel that as though there's interesting scale effects with OpenTeams, right? Where very small projects probably won't need the contribution effects, the contribution tools that OpenTeams provides. So you kind of need something at least moderately sized and larger. But where do you start and how do you build OpenTeams from that? It's a pretty interesting starting place, I think.
And I also wanted to mention, I mean, Travis just mentioned something about the fundable futures, which I think is a huge deal in what OpenTeams is trying to do, at least trying to accomplish. So a project like NumPy, really understanding the roadmap of the project, where is NumPy going? What are some of the features and support and maintenance that are going to be involved in NumPy along the way? Who are the people working on NumPy and what are the skill sets? Really understanding all those different aspects and really help understand the health of the project. And I think that is a phase where OpenTeams will definitely be interested in helping as we move forward. So that's my viewpoint.
Excellent.
So I'm wondering if, many open source projects have releases. And is there a way to sort of gather information, or, it seems like a release is a natural place to thank your contributors, as well as maybe share where you're going in the short term. And I don't know how it all fits in there, but I have a sense that it might.
That feels really good in terms of like some thinking around. We have within the platform today some amount of social networking modeling built in, and we have this notion of following. We have some notions that aren't exposed in the UI yet for membership, and we know we want to have more content, and I think that what you're proposing, or the shape of what you proposed, would fit really nicely, where we could even prompt. So I'm thinking about an integration where we're watching GitHub or we're watching GitLab, and a tag gets issued or a version gets issued on the Git repository. We could prompt the project leaders when they sign in and say, hey, I noticed you had a release. Do you want to issue a statement on the site with a thank you list? And we can automatically, if we've got all the contributions, we can probably draw up that thank you list. That'd be amazing. And then if you follow those projects when you log into your profile, wouldn't it be great to see, the thank you list, the announcement of the release, and then maybe even your name listed in there?
Yeah. I think that makes people feel good.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Excellent. Well, I think with that, we don't have any pending remaining questions here. So we'll move on to our world famous rant section, where we each get 15 seconds to rant about whatever topic we want. David, why don't you take it away? It's your soapbox.
Sure. I've gotten spoiled by my gigabit Ethernet connection. And I've realized this because it's been on the fritz for about 2 weeks. And I've become irrationally frustrated about it. So this is maybe a self-directed rant. I'm trying to keep things in perspective. What was it like when I was a kid and I was connecting to BBS's over 2400 baud modem? That was a lot of patience and waiting, but you got something worthwhile at the end. So yeah, I gotta, maybe don't raise my fist at miracles.
Eunice?
We've gotten spoiled.
That's true.
So I'll probably say my rant right now in the moment is that I'm in San Diego and the weather is amazing and it's way too good that it was my rant for this morning.
Well, you can come visit me anytime when I'm back home, since San Diego is my home. And because I've been doing a lot of traveling, and there was a tweet that Chloe Condon had about traveling a lot and carpeting in airports. And I have to say, my rant is carpeting in airports are it's like the quicksand for your roller bag. And I don't think it should exist in airports. Like, smooth surfaces, please.
Hear, hear. For my rant, I just visited the lovely state of Maine for the first time. Overall, it was an incredible experience, including an overnight sea kayaking trip, which was awesome. But Acadia National Park was swarming with people, like it's some sort of East Coast Yosemite. I'll definitely have to go back in the off season to enjoy it. That's all the time that we have for today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. You can find us on Twitter at Quansight AI if you're interested in funding open source projects, including OpenTeams. You can find all of the project roadmaps at quansight.com/projects. Eunice, David, where can folks find you and OpenTeams?
OpenTeams is at openteams.com. We're also on Twitter and I believe Facebook and Instagram. And I'm on Twitter as dcharbon, DCHARBON.
You can email me with any feedback you have at Eunice at openteams.com. And you can find me on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn at Eunice Chenju.
Excellent. Thanks. And get ready to turn interactive mode on for our next episode on Matplotlib. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Good luck.